Hello, I'm Neil Dealey, co-founder and partner of Architects and Urban Planners Metropolitan Workshop. Welcome to Reshaped, a podcast series to mark our 15th year and to record perspectives on how the built environment is changing and needs to change in this historic moment. We asked leading thinkers and doers to respond to issues highlighted by the pandemic while we're in the throes of change, and memories and perspectives are fresh. Has the door opened to a new era? We think so. The geological era we now live in has been dubbed the Anthropocene, a name reflecting the impact human activity is having on our planet's natural environment. 20 years ago, our speaker came up with the idea of measuring that impact in terms of how many planets you might need if you were living a European lifestyle. The answer was 3 or 5 if you're American. Not a sustainable prospect. We asked Pooran Desai, Chief Executive of One Planet, what we need to be doing to save the only planet we have.
We have moved in the last few years to being a primarily urban species for the first time in our history. But as a side effect of urbanization and a modern, scientific, technologically driven society, we've created massive environmental damage. So much so that we actually are, of course, changing the climate on the planet. We've initiated the 6th mass extinction of species. And in fact, we're headed for a planet which might only support 500 million to 1 billion people within the lifetime of people alive today. So we are going to have to radically change the way we perceive our relationship with nature, perceive our position in the universe, and how we urbanize in the coming years. So I've been working in sustainability for about 30 years now. I started in sustainable forestry, sustainable farming, recycling, set up a number of enterprises. We were growing as an organization. In fact, I ended up getting into green real estate development by putting together the Beddington Zero Fossil Energy Development Project, or BEDZ, in South London. That was back in the late 1990s. We completed that project in 2002. And it was really analyzing that project that we started to create the concept of One Planet Living. At the time, we started to look at all our data, our impacts on the environment, and relate that to what's known as ecological footprinting, which is a way of accounting for our impacts on the planet. And we started to create this idea of how many planets it might take to support a particular lifestyle. And so, in fact, if we all live like Europeans, we'd need 3 planets to support us. If we all live like North Americans, we'd need 5 planets. So then the challenge which we created as One Planet Living was, how can we lead happy, healthy lives within the environmental resources that we can harvest renewably from our one planet? And that was back in 2002. And I've spent the last 18 years leading teams around the world, writing sustainability plans for about $30 billion of real estate development around the world, but also working with retailers, manufacturing companies, and cities as well. So it's been a really, really exciting journey, and learned a lot from that. And have been looking now, really, how can we scale what we're doing, make it much easier for people to write sustainability plans and collaborate on them. And in fact, now we have to go even beyond sustainability, because we've destroyed so much of the planet that we actually have to regenerate it. And we're seeing that even with effects such as pandemics and coronavirus, and which is related to environmental damage as well. And as we destroy more of the natural environment, we come into contact more with animals, and we're likely to see an increase in the number of pandemics or viruses emerging if we continue down this path. So it's a really challenging future that we've got, but also potentially a really exciting one. And can we harness technology now to actually put us on a completely different path? And for me, what's absolutely critical in that is a completely different way of looking at the world. We look at the world in silos. We try and solve problems in silos. So we try and solve the climate problem. We try and solve the pandemic problem. We try and solve the waste problem. But we need to see how all those fit together. And so for me now, sustainability and regenerating the planet is all about thinking about interconnectedness. So, for example, between what we build, how dependent that makes us on cars. If those cars are internal combustion engine cars, they're creating air pollution, which is affecting our health. And of course, predisposing us to problems with things like coronavirus, which is much higher. The incidence of death from coronavirus is much higher in areas of high air pollution. But we're also then, by driving those cars, contributing to climate change. We're also then, that's connected to supporting the oil industry, which creates single-use plastics, which end up in the oceans. We're filling our fish with plastics. If we eat those fish, we're filling ourselves with microplastics, which may be affecting our health. But it's also then killing penguins. So there are connections between what we build, how we urbanize, and actually penguins dying in the Antarctic. And we need now to really be able to see those connections, understand those connections, and think connected. And when we start thinking connected, understanding the importance of our interconnectedness, we'll actually come up with completely different solutions. And I think that's what's so exciting. And actually, my work for the last 4 or 5 years has been looking at creating the digital tools which will enable us to do that. The tools we've created are expressed through a platform. We're called oneplanet.com. It's taken us a lot to get the technology right over the last few years, looking at the latest network database technologies, which are very different from the way you organize data conventionally. And in fact, we're just starting to apply them on large landscape scale conservation and development projects in Africa. And we've just received a contract to start applying it for FIFA 2022. So it's going to be very exciting over the next few years. And, we'd love to work with some people who would like to really pioneer with us and start applying it on, urban development projects. It would be fantastic. If we are to avoid catastrophic climate change, ecological collapse, our cities are going to have to be completely unrecognizable from what they are today. So, for example, they'll be much more walkable and cyclable. We'll have much more urban agriculture. So we'll be growing more of our food in what are our roads and streets at the moment. We'll see a lot more renewable energy integrated into our buildings. But we'll also see a different relationship between the city and the hinterland. We'll see much less globalization and movement of food, for example, internationally. And we will see city regions reappearing. Really strong city regions where there's a very strong relationship between the city and its surrounding area. And actually, that is a very beautiful vision of the future. So I think we do have to change, but we can also see really that life will be much better in the future if we grasp this opportunity to change.
That was Pooran Desai. His alarming suggestion that we're initiating a 6th mass extinction of species on Earth surely calls for radical and connected thinking. Yet he is optimistic that we can harness tech to help us find the answers to our ecological problems in a more connected way and avoid the extinction we seem to be careering towards. The interconnectedness of those issues is driven by how we design and use our built environment. Pooran's vision of very different cities could offer a much better life, he suggests, but only if we grasp the opportunity to change. You can listen to other podcasts in the Reshape series at all the major providers, or go to our website, metwork.co.uk. Series directed by Lee Mallet, produced by David Michon and Justina Green, recorded and edited by Sean Crook.